Hello, everybody. I'm very happy to be here and share this session about justice and righteousness, actually, with everybody who's joining in. Actually, I was invited by Kunle, my very dear friend, as he said, to share something from my heart about this subject, and which is a topic very peculiar for a lawyer. In fact, it's very, we say in English, righteousness, which comes from the word right, and rights are written in laws, and to administrate laws is to do justice. So it's very intriguing to get into the meaning of these words, to understand really what God is telling you when he's speaking about righteousness and justice in his word, and what we can do in order to fulfill what he created us for in pursuing righteousness. The first thing I want to say is about the meaning, as I mentioned, about the meaning of these words. When we say righteousness, actually, we speak of what the Jewish people say, tzedakah. So I was saying about these two words, tzedakah and mishpat, which is righteousness and justice, which we find in the Hebrew Bible, and the difference between the two words is also mentioned in the Greek text that we have of the New Testament, using dikaiousiune as righteousness and krisis, actually krisis, as justice. It's very important to see that the two are connected in this way. Righteousness has to do. Hello?
Hello, can hear you.
Yes, okay. So righteousness has to do with rights, and therefore to apply rights in your life. As mishpat, which is justice, is about administration of the instruction of the legislative body of a nation. I would focus now on tzedakah, which is righteousness, and go back to justice, that's mishpat, later on. This word has some meanings, as I hope you can see in the slide. Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, I'll carry on because, okay. Righteousness is actually meaning rectitude, acts of justice of a king in freeing, vindicating, and rewarding. It means to act generously, to act in loving kindness, to act justly towards your neighbor, mercifully. So you see, in the word tzedakah, it's justice and mercy is involved, as well as love. And this is something that maybe too often we don't see in this word, as many people think that righteousness just means not to do bad things to others, like to be righteous has a special meaning referring into helping or loving other people. We will get to that later on. I have another slide here which shows you a very important verse in the Gospel according to Matthew, which I love very much, which is Matthew 6:33. It says, Jesus said, "Seek first the kingdom of Elohim," I said Elohim, "and his righteousness, and all these things will be given to you as well." As you can see in the slide that I'm showing to you, I pointed out, what does it mean to seek, first of all? And it comes from the Greek word zeteite, which is to trace, to desire to know and discover, to passionately desire to obtain. Therefore, Jesus is telling people your priority is to desire to know, discover, and passionately desire to obtain the kingdom of God. And that word God is Elohim. And then he says, and his righteousness. Now, if we go to the meaning of the kingdom of God or the kingdom of Elohim, I don't have to say much because it's a very, common topic among the people who are listening. And I think it's God's sovereign dominion and power and rulership over our life. He planned it and the circumstances that we are going through as we live our life. Therefore, to seek the kingdom of God actually means to desire passionately that he can rule the life that we live on this planet and the circumstances we are going through as we live it. And to seek the righteousness of God is to seek, to trace, and to desire with real passion and fire in your heart God's generosity, God's loving kindness, God's mercy, God's faithfulness, in doing to each one of us what he knows is best for us according to his eternal plan. Many times I have heard, people talking about the righteousness of God according to this verse of the gospel, saying that, we have to get back the dominion that we have on this planet and to live according to God's instructions and God's commandments. When we line up with his government in heaven, we can live a righteous life on earth. I have a special insight about this. A step before that, I would say that the text is telling us not to seek how to exercise our dominion on the planet or how to be righteous, but is telling us to seek the kingdom of God and the righteousness of God. Many times this verse of the gospel, according to Matthew 6:33, is interpreted in saying, look first for the kingdom, trying to get back the dominion that mankind had on earth, and according to Genesis 1:26 and forward, and to line up with the government of heaven. I very much appreciate this, which is very important, but I would suggest as a reflection, a step backwards, because the text is actually saying, seek the kingdom of God and the righteousness of God. Therefore, I was pointing out this insight to try and understand what does it mean in our life to seek the righteousness of God. That doesn't mean to try and be righteous, but is trying to receive and obtain the righteousness of God in our life. So, okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we certainly can.
Okay, I'll go ahead. Therefore, going back to the word righteousness, that means generosity, loving kindness, mercy, and faithfulness. When Jesus said, seek for the righteousness of God, he's telling us to not look for things in your life. Don't be worried about your life and what you will wear, what you will eat, what you will drink. But first of all, receive and obtain and run after with all desire and passion the generosity of God, the loving kindness of God, the mercy and the faithfulness of God. In doing what? God is faithful in doing to each one of us what he knows is best for us according to his eternal plan. Therefore, you see, to me, it gets a very different and deep flower, that it means that we focus on him and not on ourselves. So Jesus says our priority is to receive all the love and the mercy and the faithfulness of God in our life, and that will change our circumstances. I go back to that later on. As God exercises his dominion, as we seek his kingdom, acting in righteousness towards us, and not only towards us, but also through us. So that's the reason why then we can do righteous deeds or actions resembling our Father who is in heaven, just like Jesus did. And also I would like to say that righteousness is the visible way in which God exercises his dominion in our life and through us. Therefore, you see, righteousness is a very, very pivotal point in the whole subject of the kingdom, because it is the visible way in which God is ruling in our life and through us, dominating the whole planet. In other words, I would put it like this. If I can go on, and I would put in other words like this. If I desire that God rules my life and over my circumstances, I also passionately desire and expect, that has to do with trust, or like some people call it, faith. I also passionately desire to receive from him what he wants to give me out of his love, according to his eternal plan for me. So this is what Jesus did, actually. It was in the Gospel of John, we can read that Jesus was telling people that he has shown them many good works from the Father. So what was he saying? He was telling them that the Father is, the righteousness of the Father is shown on the planet through me. And this and the righteousness, which is the visible way in which God exercises his dominion in our life, was these good works which Jesus was doing, and was saying, do not believe me unless I do the works of my Father. So what we see is a special link between the Father and Jesus, as Jesus was doing the exact rights and deeds of righteousness that the Father wanted to make visible on the planet. In this respect, if we seek for the righteousness of God, to receive his mercy, his goodness and faithfulness, then we are called to do the same thing to the others, and we become instruments of righteousness, as Paul says in the letter to the Romans, actually, in doing the same good works and the same good things, freeing, vindicating the ones who are in bondage, and setting them free from their afflictions. Therefore, you see, righteousness is not just doing the right thing or lining up with the commandments of God in a general and broad sense. Righteousness, or tzedakah, has to do with doing good to others as much as God is doing good to us. And Jesus says, if you want to do good things to others, you have to accept the good things that God is doing to you first. That's why it is a priority. Therefore, my dear friends, I really believe that until we experience and expect to receive the mercy, the faithfulness, and all the other attributes I was speaking about, like loving kindness from God, and to experience it in our life, we cannot exercise the same acts of righteousness or tzedakah to the others. And that's what we are called to do, actually.
Wow. So from what you're saying, Maurizio, if I can just jump in for a minute, from what you say, it's quite apparent that righteousness, in fact, has a lot to do with our relationship with God, with the relationship we have with our King, and what we experience from that relationship is exactly what we also begin to extend to others. You know,
Exactly.
and I also love your definition there, that righteousness actually is the way in which God exercises his dominion, his sovereignty on earth. You know, that actually brings it home, and it makes it look a lot more practical. And I can see that relationship with God is prerequisite to reflecting and exercising the righteousness of God. So thank you very much. That is so expertly put. Now from the eyes of law, how do you help us to appreciate this concept of righteousness in even better?
Okay, you see, as I was saying at the beginning, the administration of laws is called justice. It's not called righteousness. To administrate laws, it's the act of judging or rendering judgment. So that pertains to the way that righteousness is applied to the single case. in a way that you cannot have a righteous judgment from an unrighteous judge. And you cannot have you know, well, how would I say, a judge who says you're not guilty or you haven't done anything if you didn't act according to the laws that the judge is going to administrate. Therefore, justice has got to do a lot with the act of administration rendering judgments. Why righteousness is the attitude of life of the citizens to live according to the instructions of the legislative body. Live according to the instructions, the judge will deliver you from any illegal bondage.
Absolutely. You know, that is so real, so very good. You know, the other time I heard that righteousness ultimately leads to peace. Or let me say it in a different way. That when you create law, what you want to do is to, as part of that, to indicate what is right or wrong in a society. Now, if depending on the citizens' attitude to law, you have to then exercise justice or administer justice. So if I obey the law, then in the eye of the law, I am righteous. Then I can have justice. If I disobey the law, in the eye of the law, I am unrighteous, I'm a violator of the law, but I will still have justice. Justice, therefore, is what is due to me based on my attitude to law. Now, when justice is done, then you can have rest, or what we call peace. So,
yeah, that's right. Yes.
So it seems to me, therefore, that when we see lawyers, when we see baristas and you know, judges, they're actually administrators of justice. They actually administrate justice in response to the citizens' attitude to law, and the outcome could be a place of satisfaction or rest or peace.
Yes, I would say something about what you mentioned, the lawmaking process, because I think many people would not understand what's really going on, for example, here in Italy, about this topic. Now, actually, in a democracy like civil law countries like Italy, laws are not made to indicate to people what is right and what is wrong. That's very, could be superficial. Actually, the legislative body takes and puts into laws what it is already a norm. It is already a culture among the citizens. For instance, recently in Italy, we had civil marriages like same-sex and things like that carried on and set out by statutes. And they didn't tell with these laws what is right and what is wrong. They just put into the laws what has been done for the last 10 years already in the culture. Therefore, I would say that in our systems, what we should change through righteousness is